It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantha Tracks TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine. Welcome to the live stream. It's Thursday night and it's Andor Review Night, so join me this week, Mr. Paul Naylor. How are you, Paul?
I'm great. How are you, Brian?
I'm really good, thanks. Here to talk all about Cassian Andor, Disney Plus. Latest show, episode 6, The Eye, has just aired. Your thought on it?
I think it was like a mini movie. It was brilliant. Some people have issues with the pacing of this series, but I think Andor is more like a book. It's very sort of narrative. It digs right down into the minutiae of it all, which to some people that slows things down. But certainly, maybe last week's episode could have been accused of being perhaps maybe a little bit unnecessary. But this week, I thought there was a lot of payoff in it. It was a really strong episode.
Yeah, it's kind of following this 3-episode arc kind of thing, so it's kind of building up to this episode, and this episode was kind of the payoff of what we've seen in the last two.
Yeah.
So it was the big attack on the base. Was the big thing this week, and the show kind of kicked off with our good pal here, waxing lyrical.
Little Nemec, yes.
About his manifesto and his feelings, and having a real dig at Clem, or Cassian as we know him better. What do you think of him as a character? Because he's kind of really come into his own in the second half of the last episode, and he kicked off this episode for us.
Nemec, you mean?
Yes.
As in, yeah. Apart from the ridiculous hat, I think he's quite an interesting little character, isn't he? He looks like Pinocchio. But no, he's very passionate about his views. Writes everything down in his journal, and I think considering he's probably the youngest on the team, I'm pretty sure he is the youngest on the team. He seems to be the brains of the operation.
Yeah.
I think he's very well played. He's from I couldn't place him, but then my son told me what the TV show that he remembers him from, which I can't repeat because it's got a swear word in the middle, and we know we don't like associating swear words with Andor. But no, he's a great actor.
And he's in the Imitation Game as well.
He's in that as well, right?
So he plays the young version of the main character.
Ah, right. Okay. But yeah, I think he in every scene that he's in, there's that sort of nervous energy about the character, which I quite like. He's almost the Riz Ahmed character from Rogue One in many ways. He's that sort of the glue that holds it all together. Yeah. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I have mixed views, but I'm going to come to him later because he plays a important angle in this episode.
Yeah.
And I'm going to jump across to this guy.
Yes.
Who has come into the episode. He is effectively the lead Imperial on the planet. He's here to oversee the Eye and everything that's happening. And he makes a very interesting comment, which I'm going to pull up straight away, about the lowlanders travelling to the Highlands and building basically pubs along the way because they'll stop and drink. What a slur on the Scottish people. You would never find us taking drinks at inappropriate times.
I mean, what they could really do is, as well as mentioning the pubs, there should have perhaps been a couple of kebab shops and somewhere to deep fry a Mars bar, and then we would have all been sorted. But it did make me laugh.
My sole objection to it was it said that there were stragglers that dropped off. Doesn't happen. We make it to the end. But we can check out the pub crawl.
Yeah.
That is a Saturday night out for me. That's standard.
It looks more like Carnival Day in Newport, Shropshire.
My
I
main
grew up there.
issue
And I
though,
can tell
what's in these cups?
you got the cups. Oh
Yeah,
well, that's clearly from Disney
yeah,
parks. It's blue milk or green milk, I think.
yeah.
Yeah,
What they hide in there when it's a blacked out cup, you're hiding something. It's not water. It's just
exactly. What did you make of his uniform? Because it's like a slightly pimped version of the normal sort of olivey green. It's got the black bit around the collars, and there's,
yeah.
is that because he's had to let it out a bit?
It was kind of different, but of course, they also played in another issue. I'm going to have to pull up that Cassian
The
had hit
belt.
on earlier in the episode. Fat Imperials, fat shaming. He was fat shamed in this episode. Was a poor Imperial.
So it's fat shaming and parochial pubs.
Yeah, shocking, shocking, shocking.
Here he is. Good morning, sir. How's the jet lag?
Yeah, Mr. Newbill just back from New York Comic Con. Um,
Yes.
and this was kind of the initial build up, character build, and introducing us to the key players at the start of the episode, and we start moving towards the real crux of the episode. There's the dam, or in this instance, it's the Imperial base.
Yeah.
We've got Cinta and Vel are kind of hiding under the local masonry there, and they're going to use that as their hideout. They're going to be swimming towards that dam later in the episode as part of the mission to break it down. And our main group of rebels all lined up, ready to play their roles of Imperials, and we kind of learned that Taran was a stormtrooper, which was kind of an interesting
Yeah.
little element thrown in.
Yeah. Sort of like it's typical George Lucasy stuff, isn't it? It's paying homage to how George would have things that sort of rhyme. So that sort of rhymes with The Force Awakens, with Finn being a stormtrooper. It's that kind of idea, isn't it? But yeah, one thing I did note that I think was picked up in the previous episode was where Cassian suggested that they should march in a certain way so that their rifles were pointing outwards rather than inwards. In this one, that they couldn't give a
Yeah,
stuff about that. The rifles all pointing in at each other. If anything went off, they'd all be dead. Yeah,
Part of me wonders if that scene was added at a later point to mock the fact that we really
yeah,
mucked up in
possibly.
everything we shot here. It's all back to front.
Yeah. But that totally didn't go with the previous week's episode. But yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Something I did like was the design of the locals,
yeah,
because they didn't go. I thought they were going to go the whole kilt kind of route, and I'm glad they didn't. They kind of did something a little bit different. Gone for the sort of sheepskin kind of jackets and coats, although they did go for the stereotypical Scottish gingers.
yeah. I just said it was more of like a nativity play kind of vibe, but half expecting some teacher to be there with sort of leather elbow pads playing the piano so they could all have a sing song. But no, it was all good.
Yeah. One aspect of the episode, and we've seen it a lot throughout the show, is we've seen a lot of family life, which is something we don't really get to see very often in Star Wars. So
Yeah,
we kind of saw the family life here. The kid, a little bit stuck up, won't do what he's told. Father's just wanting things to go right for him because he's him and the wife kind of want to transfer away from here. This is the chance. This was also a scene where he got fat shamed by his own wife as well. I'm going with the fact that things got compressed in travel.
the belt had definitely shrunk, hadn't it, in
A
transit?
lot of my
Definitely.
clothes have compressed over the time. When I do conventions,
My clothes are always compressing. I dared buy one of those vacuum bags where they suck all the air out. No.
Yeah. Mr. Newbold is in the chat. He'll be saying he's suffered from his clothes compressing when he's been in New York a bit.
Too much cheesecake, Mr. Newbold.
And I think we kind of touched on it before we went live about the pacing of the show, and there's some criticism. And it seems like this, it does slow it down, but it actually plays quite a crucial part late in the show because introducing the wife, the kid, actually introduces an element of peril that he's got something to lose.
Yeah. I think what it does is you feel more invested in the character if you've got some of this background information. We were talking about this in one of the group chats with Claire from Fantatrax the other day, that this, more than any of the other output that we've had from Disney, Disney Plus TV material. This feels like a quality 9 p.m. Sunday night drama that you'd get perhaps on the BBC or on ITV, that might be shown over 3 or 4 nights or 6 weeks, 6 weeks worth of content. It's that sort of quality drama that used to be like the highlight of the winter season. Kids were going back to school and they start advertising that they're going to have this great drama series on. This feels like that. And I know a lot of people are saying it's not Star Warsy enough. It is. It's just you've got to look at it from a slightly different perspective than what you're used to. I love the character development. I love the fact that things are given time to breathe. They're not just rushing at things. It's for me episode 6, and Louis said it as well in the chat. Best episode, definitely best episode so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's bring up the next scene I've pulled out here. One I thought was a great shot, typical Scottish weather, and part of me wondered, did they hate the fact that the Har was in, and but I think they've run with it, and I think it works well. Adds an element of nice mystery to the show. Part of me thinks they probably wanted the lovely, beautiful hillside showing, but I think it worked better the way it was. Wet, dull day. Typical Scottish day. They should have anticipated it if they hadn't. And our lieutenant, who's effectively an Imperial traitor, starts his sort of manipulation of the day. And I thought he played a great role in the episode. I really enjoyed his work.
Yeah. No, he's very strong in it. One of the comments coming up there, yeah, you just pulled it up on the screen. That's a really, really good point. We're actually seeing the softer side of the Empire and the darker side of the Rebellion,
Yep.
which is like an interesting juxtaposition of what we're normally fed. And yeah, he's a particularly strong character. I like the way that he's actually portraying that role. There's the bit where he meets up with the forgive me, I can't remember the name of the character, the one who's struggling to get his belt around him, the one that we were just looking at. When he criticises him for being a traitor, and he said, like, I'd rather do this than serve another 7 years alongside you. So clearly a seething hatred for the Empire, and perhaps even that one commander in particular. But it's been interesting seeing the underbelly of the Empire, and also the perhaps some of the more harsher realities of the Rebellion. This isn't like when we were growing up as 7-year-old kids and we've got goodies and baddies. It's way more blurred than that.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Kingdom of Weird's comment there, because it's something that I like to bang on about every week. The Imperials are the democratically elected government. Right?
Here we go.
All the powers are democratically given to them. The rebels are the terrorists. Right? That's fact. And the only reason that the history is reported the way it does in Star Wars is because this is effectively the Journal of the Whills. It's because the rebels win, and so the winners always get to write history. And, so if you break it down, the pure democratically elected people, the democratically elected president, usurped by these terrible terrorists who've killed millions by blowing up Death Star after Death Star. Terrible.
Right, rant over.
That's the weekly rant done. Let's
get
get
back. Lads.
Let's get back to good old fun terrorism. Here we go. Cinta and Vel swam across the loch towards the Imperial base and start
That was
climbing
very
up
James Bond. Did you think that was very James Bond the way they did that?
Yes, it was.
They got that underwater sort of little pod thing, and then you could see the beginnings of the eye streaking across the sky above them. I thought that was an interesting shot.
I also liked the way that their sort of costumes were pulled together, and that things were thought about. Like she had like a waterproof sealed bag that she was taking her equipment out of. There was a good depth of thought gone into this. It wasn't just a throwaway scene, and I kind of like the way that it was done. I kind of actually liked the way they kind of filmed the underwater kind of scene, but I couldn't get a
Yeah.
good screen grab of that, so I don't have a clip of that.
No, but that was an interesting shot. But no, I mean, you just made me think there, and I was thinking this the other day as well, because we've got so much content coming out all the time now for Star Wars. You don't get, in the good old days, 77, 80, 83, and certainly with the prequels where you had those 3 year gaps as well. You got time for them to develop the product line, action figures. You get wave one, wave two, wave three. So you get some of the smaller characters. You're never going to see these underwater costumes as an action figure,
No.
because they'll put out perhaps a dozen figures, and then we're on to the next show after that, which is a shame because it's quality stuff.
Yeah. Um, at this point, the show's starting to come together. We've got Lieutenant's kind of been placing what group of Imperials go where, so he's obviously tagged his rebels to be the accompanying party to the privileged Imperials who are running the ceremony. They have a little exchange of, I think it's Dre furs they're going to call them, and as part of this the attempt to be peaceful between the locals and the Imperials, which was kind of like a little interesting kind of play, I thought.
Yeah,
Mr. Newball's also echoing your point on the. Let's bring that back up on the action figures as well.
yeah, yeah. It is a shame.
So this was where the slow build of the episodes kind of pays off because they're sort of layering things at this point,
Yeah,
and allows you to be a lot more attached to certain characters as well, that you necessarily wouldn't have had the time in a normal paced kind of show to really get to know them. So like characters like Vel and Sintner, who are kind of not major players in this, in terms of their involvement in the core element of the story, could have been really pushed to the background, but they get like nice character pieces, and you kind of actually start to care about them a little bit.
that's it, and that's why these sort of protracted sort of dialogue pieces, the set pieces that we're getting, you do actually care about these characters, which is what I was going to. When we get towards the end of this episode, when things start going a little bit pear shaped, that's exactly my thoughts on it. Yeah,
Yeah, and Fat Imperial, he gets taken hostage.
Bill Bailey.
Yeah, Bill Bailey, the Fat Imperial. Um, Vale and Sintner also join up with the rest of the rebels at this point, and we've got the whole group together.
Their AKs.
Yeah, things look to be going well, but there is one Imperial who got his suspicions. He starts hearing things on the radio, which is them referring to each other as Valley 1 and Echo 1, which was kind of their communications. Nemec had kind of been working with them on like an old-fashioned kind of field radio, but the Imperials tech picked that up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. You got to have somebody in there that had spotted it, otherwise you weren't going to get any sort of it all going wrong. Yeah, when he gets challenged, when we get a bit more into it, and you can tell he's quite conflicted whether he should do anything about it because he's being told by his superiors, "Get out of it. This is nothing to do with you," even though it's quite clear what's going on.
Yeah.
The payroll's being run. It's a more successful version of what they tried to do in Solo, but because this is spread out over 12 episodes, or certainly this part of the show is over a 3-episode arc, they've got more time to actually dig deep into it. When it was in Solo as part of the train heist, it's a 20-minute segment of the film, so you can't really give it the detail that we've got here, which is a shame because this is where it's working. This is where we're getting the setup and then we're getting the payoff.
Yeah. Kevin Weird as well, also making the point. We get to see the rebels holding a mum and child captive. Makes you think how many were on the Death Star. Very good point. I'll also point out that if you refer back to what we've seen of Alderaan, all the other kids were horrible little brats. So like nobody worries about blowing them up. But nice Imperial children on the Death Star murdered for the rebels.
In the Imperial crash.
I'm not going to call them rebels. I'm going to call them domestic terrorists.
You go, Brian. You go.
We also got this touching scene between Sintner and Vel. Little emotional kind of moment as they kind of split up for a little bit whilst they carry on with their mission. Um, Something Disney really struggles with is sort of gay representation, and they still really struggle here and be able to just say it. In this, I kind of pointed out on social media that so far we've had brothels, we've had effectively sex scenes where we've had characters jump into bed, everyone's dealing drugs and all sorts of seedy goings on, but we can't call two people gay. It's
It's a
2022,
bit.
come on.
It's the old Peter Kane lesbians, but you can't say lesbians.
Yeah, can't say
But
it, can't say it.
it was alluded to in one of the previous episodes. It was either 4 or 5 where didn't one of the characters say that they share blanket? In other words, they sleep together. So it had already been mentioned prior to seeing that
Yeah,
in this week's episode. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They're very cagey about it.
yeah. Very strange, very strange.
Yeah.
I'm loving Kingdom of Weird tonight. Just calling it out there. If I'm not already subscribed, I'm subscribing. Storm Mothers and Storm Children, I'm going with that. Like,
That's gone down a storm with Brian
yeah.
Adams. There you go.
And then we get to the real crux of the mission here. Here's the what a quarter worth of Imperial payroll looks like, and rolled up credits, I guess. So our poor fat Imperial has to help them enter the safe. They kind of blow it open a little bit, get
It's a nice
access
still. I like that still.
to the cash, and start forcing the Imperials to get start loading up their escape transport with it.
Well, what you're not going to do the hard work yourself if you've got all those people there to do it
Harsh,
for
like
you, are
what
you?
I thought. It's like you've been planning this for months and months and months, and you get nobody to load it up. You have to actually hope in the fact that Imperials are going to have people just lounging about playing cards. Thankfully, they did.
That was brilliant.
And our good Imperial friend, he's getting more and more suspicious when they start talking about loading up the freighter with money. He's thinking something strange going on tonight. Meantime, the Scottish people have got the drinking, and they're going mad.
Now, don't you think?
Whilst I'm going to carry on with another stereotype, whilst the English are getting away with the taxpayers' money.
So we're going to have a vote for independence now, are we?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's just like, there's our good tax money's gone. Shocking.
Oh dear.
I know.
Yeah, those the locals that are celebrating.
Scottish people drinking doesn't happen.
Yes, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It's root beer, honestly.
Yeah.
Root beer.
It's
Don't you think that
Windswept Brewing Company
very
made
nice.
500 yards down the road from me.
Are you an investor?
No, sadly not. Sadly
All right,
not.
well, we can't chalk that down as an advert then. But don't you think that the Rise of Skywalker, where we've got all those weird aliens dancing on a planet where they do marvelous sweets, it would have been better to have had this kind of vibe going on rather than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up was
The Northern Lights.
the Northern Lights of Old Aberdeen, as the song goes. Very traditional Scotland, happens very regular. I don't even bother going outside to look at it. Yeah, people all travel hundreds of miles to come and see it. I don't understand.
Too
the
busy
advertiser
Saturday
wants
meeting
a
with deep fried Mars bars.
Yeah, Mr. Newbold would like some of the beers.
Could become a new sponsor. There you go.
New sponsor of the show, yeah. And there we go. The Imperials loading up the money. That's actually one of the rebels, in fact. Isn't it? That's is it Skeen? I think his name is Skeen.
Yeah, skiing. Yeah.
And then perhaps one of the visual highlights of the episode I thought was the TIE fighters.
Brilliant.
Pilots are called. The Imperials realise something's going on. Great scene. Another fantastic example of bad design. Because how complicated is it to get into the TIE fighter? It then has no shield, so they just go pop. So it's like, if the guy's not killed himself, get into the TIE fighter, he's going to die whilst in it. And you've spent all that money and time training them.
but it looks great. And what I particularly liked is when they showed it from another angle. I think you could see 3 or 4 of them in a row before they detached, and you could see the greeny blue light glowing off the glass of the TIE fighters from the eye that was going overhead. Really, really cool aesthetic that was. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I just think for the amount of cash, obviously shown right there, that Imperials have never in the 40 years of the span of the Star Wars franchise have they invested in a new design that's, slightly more practical where they can just run and jump in. No safety rails in Star Wars. This is a falsehood. They're becoming more and more apparent, and I'm going to show you right there. Look at that.
Everywhere.
Safety rails everywhere in an Imperial base. Shocking. Um, but more crucial, our sus Imperial, he's kind of gotten onto the game here, so he's gone down to the freighter room, and he's basically says, "What the heck's going on here?" To be confronted with our lovely lieutenant, who plays a stormer in terms of, you wouldn't want to play this guy at the back. He's got the bluff. He was basically, there's nothing going on. This is a private,
Move along.
confidential thing going on, and you don't have the clearance to be here. Away you go.
Go
And,
watch the Northern Lights.
yeah,
Go on.
and sadly, this guy just ruins it for the rebels.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Poor old Bill. He's had his last bit of battered Mars bar and the last bit of haggis. He's on his
Yeah.
way out. He's
Uh,
gone.
As Mr. Newbold said, deep fried mon calamari, obviously. Um, and at this point, our TIE fighters are up in the air and away with their gigantic helmets, which I've always hated. But we do get some lovely shots of
That's it. That's what we want.
hugely expensive equipment required to get a TIE fighter into space.
Beautiful,
Everybody
though,
else
isn't
just
it?
runs
Yeah.
and jumps in their spaceship, but not the Imperials. They've got to go along gantries and down ladders,
Yeah, yeah,
employ
and
sophisticated robotics to get it going.
yeah.
All for the,
X-wing pilots have those magic yellow ladders that disappear, haven't they?
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
terrible.
Mm.
Meanwhile, the rebels are basically getting away. They've loaded up their freighter. Nemec takes a seat right next to the cache. He'll look after it. Nothing's going to go wrong there. And the TIE fighters take out of the Imperial base, which I would have liked to seen a little bit more of. But you get a nice shot of the valley. Good use of the money spent for being on location. Some beautiful shots.
Yeah.
Clem stroke Cassian, who isn't involved too much in this episode, to be fair, fires up
No.
the rockets on the ship. Ship goes boom.
Clem gets
Nemec
well, not
goes,
Clem.
Nemec goes
Nemec.
bang.
Yeah.
And squashed by the cash.
Yeah.
That's how I want to go. Crushed by the weight of my own money. It's a Scrooge McDuck moment, isn't it? It's like he's up on the high board, he's diving into that cash. That's got to hurt. Yeah.
A Scrooge
Every episode he did it. He doesn't matter. He's got that much cash. He can take the pain.
That's brilliant. I love that.
And
Yeah.
the guys escape, and we get amazing shots of the Eye, which was a terrible name in the end for basically the Northern Lights.
Yeah. I thought it was really, really well done, though. It looked very effective.
Looked beautiful.
Yeah.
And the Highlanders, they're loving it. Although, to be fair, they're massively distracted from this very religious sacred ceremony that they walk hundreds of miles to attend by one ship. Because they've got no idea what's going on.
Well, apparently they walk 500 miles and then they walk 500 more.
Yes, that's very true. Why did they not have a chant whilst they were marching?
They should have just had the proclaimers stood there in the background somewhere. Brilliant.
We also got some weird bondage equipment. Is the only way to describe it.
Someone's been on to Love Honey.
As face masks go to keep people quiet, they were odd. That's for sure. Don't know where that came from. Who designed that? Terrible.
Oh, it's clearly right. That's Ryan Johnson all over.
It is.
Definitely.
And a lot of cash to be crushed by. Poor guy, poor Nemec.
Yeah.
He's not having a good time. Vel, she helps him. Taran, I think. Did Taran die? I kind of missed what happened to him, to be fair.
Yes. I think he got shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what you're seeing there on the screen, that's Nemec struggling with the plunging pound.
That's just $1 worth right there.
That's hyperinflation for you, or hyperspace inflation.
Oh dear. And Cinta was left on the planet as well, which we'll come back to. But Vel's there, um, and Nemec struggling. We get, as we kind of alluded to, we get amazing shots. Really look fantastic. And Cassian stroke Clem, who I've got very few shots of in this slideshow, starts trying to navigate his way. But how they're going to get out of this? They're kind of pinned down by the Northern Lights. I'm just going to call them that. I can't call them the eye. It looks nothing like an eye. Although, having mentioned that, last week's episode of Lord of the Rings: Rings of Power was also called The Eye.
Oh.
Fun fact. And this week's
Power
House
Rock?
of Dragons, House of the Dragons, the king was missing an eye. It's very much been across all three fantasy shows. It's all about aye. And I lied when I said I didn't have shots of Cassian. There we go.
Hey.
There we go. He's focused on the job in hand. Nemec, he's been pulled out from underneath the cache, and he's got a job to do because he's kind of got the navigation device. He's the one that needs to get them out of there with his old school tech, which, if you're not familiar with, is actually the very same camera that they used for Boba Fett's helmet. So if you flip that upside down, it's the very same camera where they take the little spokey bit that forms the very tip of his antenna, comes off of that very same camera.
Ooh.
There you go.
You font of knowledge.
Mr. Newbold there with a terrible comment. Terrible.
Dear me.
Ochai. That would have been a better name for it. Ochai.
Or the build up to it should have been called the Iron Brew.
Yeah.
No, okay.
That's what they call the loch. It's called the Iron Brew. We get some weird shots where I thought the special effects weren't great in the episode at times. Like this kind of it looked weird. It looked very model, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of the puddle jumper from Stargate Atlantis. If you're familiar with it. That didn't work for me. There's some weird shots and amongst some amazing stuff, and like this TIE fighter being exploded as it goes through the eye was just a sensational shot as well. So there was a mixed bag in there, but by the vast majority, beautifully crafted special effects.
I liked how the second TIE fighter took out the third one. That was good.
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of mentioned earlier, characters left behind. Cinta, who's transformed in an Imperial outfit, just starts walking down the hill and amongst everybody else, which I kind of thought was odd. I don't know what the future is for her character. I don't know why they split them up and why she's taking this journey, and I do wonder if she's going to come back in the series at all.
It does make you think, but there was no closure for that character. But for the most part, it got a pretty much Rogue One kind of ending where everybody suddenly gets offed. But we don't know what's happened to her, really.
Yeah. The Highlanders, they had their little emotional moment. I didn't buy into the whole thing. I don't know what happened, but I didn't buy into this. It was a huge ceremonial thing for them, and I don't know. That part of it didn't work for me. They didn't sell that point well enough, I don't think.
Just because they weren't selling tea towels and mugs.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't know. The,
I
the
think it was,
parliament they were going to was kind of weirdly like nothing,
yeah,
and I don't know. The whole thing, something was. I don't know. It was a little bit weak. I don't know the importance of it, the significance of it, the scale of it. I kind of felt like there should have been some kind of ceremony going on or something. And it just seemed a little. Let's all huddle up round this weird three-pronged stone.
yeah. I think they're meant to be sort of not very technologically advanced on that planet, so perhaps it was more sort of druid sort of inspired than anything else.
Yeah.
But I thought it was okay. It was all right.
Mr. Newball makes a good point. After the Aki Aki festival, little flat. If they'd all
You
been
can
up at,
stick your you
if
can
they'd all
stick your
been,
aki aki where you found it. We'll have another one in 42 years. All right, that's it. Who was it? Who was the beer by, Brian?
Winswick Brewing Company out of Lossiemouth.
Sponsors of Fanta
Yeah.
Tracks.
And if you have one of those beers, then this is what your day ends up like.
Oh yeah,
Lovely.
bonfire.
If you go with the rival beer, this is how your day ends up. um, Fantastic alien, got to say.
Yeah, yeah, really
So
creepy.
effectively, Cassian, they get off planet, they go to. Oops, nearly lost something there. Went off planet to. They had a plan in place for if they had a medical need or whatever. All good rebels have a plan, have a backup. And they had a medical guy there, started work on Nemec, and Vel kind of watches over it as Clem stroke Cassian goes outside. And I always think the guy's name is it Stern? I think it is.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Newbold will correct us. This guy. Wait a sec. Wait a sec. Wait a sec. Wait a sec. Here we go. This guy.
Is it skiing?
Skiing. You're correct.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and there's a good point. Me and Mr. Naylor. Apparently, you interviewed the four-armed guy at Croydon last year.
yeah. We did. Yeah, is that actually him playing that part as well, Mark? Because it looks a little bit like him, although he was quite thin. Yeah. But yeah, wasn't he the same guy that was responsible for the booby milk that Luke Skywalker has in the Last Jedi? If so, well, he sort of kind of redeemed himself a bit there. Yeah, interesting character. I think we all thought it was a bit sort of Maz Kanata-ish when we first saw the eyes, but yeah, almost Quato now, isn't he, from Total Recall?
So apparently his name's Skeen.
Yeah.
Mr. Newbold also confirms that. But now known as dead.
Yeah, I like this in Cassian. If somebody starts getting a bit too loose-lipped, he just bang, you're gone.
Yeah.
We saw it at the beginning of Rogue One. He's already done it twice at least now in this series.
It's kind
Brilliant.
of it's Halloween season, so it's kind of how would you describe it? Um, it's time for the purge. There we go. It's Halloween season.
There goes
That's
Dean.
Skeen. It's when the purge comes on TV, and Cassian very much likes the idea of he can have a 24-hour purge and people. He's happy just to kill people at random, isn't he?
Yeah, he loves it.
Yeah.
Very trigger happy.
And I kind of thought this series we're going to learn why he got to the point that he felt so easy to kill someone at the start of Rogue One. I thought that might be we'll discover how he goes so dark, but it turns out he's been just like that in real life. Just a trigger happy kind of guy. We're not going to explain or justify that plot point. He's say the wrong thing to this guy, he's going to just take you out. And,
He's got very very tight tendons.
Yeah. Then he does something really weird, and he goes back into the tent where they're operating on Nemec, and let's be honest, things don't go to plan. 2 hands, 4 hands, doesn't really matter. Here we go. Aidan Cook was the body, and
Yeah.
Paul Warren the lower arms. Who's the upper arms? Is that Aidan?
So Aiden would have been the upper arms.
Yeah.
So yeah, Aiden was a really sort of very quiet, unassuming guy. Really, a really nice chat with him. And he had a lot to do with kids' TV as well. Yeah, oh, that's a nice one. Thanks for that, Mark.
And Cassian returns the Kyber crystal to Vel, which is odd because it's worth 30,000 credits apparently. And I don't know what's happening at this point. Is he taking all the cash? What's going on? We're not really sure. It's not really very explained very well, but other than the fact that he's parting ways, is Cassian, with his rebels. And I think Paul's frozen. Are you frozen, Paul? Oh no, we've lost Paul. I'm going to carry on regardless. On my own. Paul might come back. Who knows? Let's flip it over to a scene where I'm on my own. Here we go. I've lost Paul. And so we've kind of, at this point, we don't really know what's happening. Does he escape with all the money? Gives back the Kyber crystal to Vel. It's kind of an odd ending. I didn't really get it. But we'll live with it. I think we're creating a real split at the end of this 3-episode arc. And we start travelling around the galaxy. So first we head to the Imperial Security Bureau. Panic stations, they're all being called. Impromptu meeting. And there's going to be a revenge taken across the galaxy for what's happened at Aldhani. We go to the Galactic Senate. Mon Mothma giving an important speech, but this was kind of very reminiscent of, I thought, of what happened the day that the Queen died. And if you remember, in the UK Parliament, they started passing notes around the Parliament as the news broke at 12:30 during Prime Minister's question times, and there was a whole hustle went round the Galactic Senate, and it made Mon Mothma interrupt her speech to bring up her datapad to see what was going on, and she obviously gets the news of what's going on in Aldhani. And news spreads to Luthien. Can't find anyone more delighted than him. And something quite funny to end the episode, but I thought the tone really differed. I didn't know if we needed to see at this point the reaction to the Aldhani situation, but I guess we're kind of emphasise the importance of it. And it was interesting way to end the episode. I kind of felt it was a little bit flat, but maybe it needed done if they're going to do a time jump, which I think is possible before the next episode, to start setting things up. And as Mr. Newbuild says, technology wins, and he loves live TV. Always going to be exciting on Good Morning Tatooine, whether it's losing a guest or not. And then Mark there, he's got the opposite opinion. He liked the end, shows the galaxy is paying attention, and I think that was perhaps the important thing they were trying to sell, was the significance of this event, and it's going to be much like the events of Rogue One at the end. This was a significant marker in the history of the rebellion. Securing this money, having this impact on the base was significant, and that's why characters like Luthien were involved. And that's why the information's getting back to Mon Mothma. So I'm interested to see where it goes from now. It feels like Cassian's broken away a little bit from the rebels again. How's he going to hook up with Luthien again? What's going to happen there? Is he going to head back to Ferrex? I'd like to see Bex back involved as well, kind of, or Bix rather, back involved. I think that's important to get that back into the storyline. So that's where I hope the next episode's going to head. And that was episode 6 of Andor. I think the majority of people, going to have loved that episode. Can't believe Mr. Naylor couldn't find another 50p for the meter. That is life in the UK, paying the electrics at the moment. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I think most people, as I say, loved that episode. It really started delivering on a lot of what's been building. I think it showed the significance of the character building, that everyone seemed to kind of have their own story. I thought some characters could have had better payoffs than they did, and I think there was still a little bit of confusion left at the end as well, that could have been easily shown. I'm not sure the point of separating Cassian from the rebels again is, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. There's going to be a twist there, and we'll have to wait to see what comes from that. But that was Cassian Andor, episode 6 on Disney Plus. We've got a whole week to wait for next episode 7. In the meantime, we've got Rings of Power coming out on Friday, House of the Dragon on Monday. So life at the moment for people that enjoy science fiction and fantasy is great. So join me next week. I'm going to have a full show again, covering episode 7 with a guest as yet unplanned, and hopefully they'll last the entirety of the show. So for everyone that's been part of it, I've appreciated your comments and your thoughts, and I look forward to finding out and sharing with you our thoughts next week.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on panthatracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at Panthatracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow Panthatracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.